Welcome to this meeting of the Skills Committee. It's very good to see everybody again. We're slightly thin on the ground due to illness this morning, but fortunately Correct, so that's excellent. And particular welcome to Tom Sanderson subbing for Sam from Huntingdon. Sam. You're very welcome, Tom. It's very nice to see you. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the press and public who have joined us today in Huntingdon. I don't think we have any in Huntingdon, but those online or watching the meeting on the live stream, very welcome. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its meetings, so please feel free to take pictures or tweet during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone at present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will move to the muster point, which is in the High Street. I would remind members and officers that the meeting is being recorded. First of all, we'll turn to Tamar for apologies for absence.
Okay, apologies received from Councillor Peter MacDonald, Councillor Chris Seaton and Councillor Sam Wakeford.
Thank you. And we'll move to disclosable interest. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in any of the items being considered today? I see no declarations of interest. If there are any that need to be made, they can be made at any point during the meeting. So we'll move to the approval of the minutes and the action log. Item 1.2 is the approval of the minutes of the meeting on the 5th of September. We're being asked to confirm these as an accurate record. If any member wishes to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes, please could you indicate now? I see no indications on the accuracy, so I'll sign them in a moment. Oh, okay, that's fine. Is that better? Does anyone wish to raise anything on the accuracy of the minutes? No. Thank you. I'll sign them in a moment and we'll move to the action log. So Fliss, would you like to comment on the action log?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the actions, the majority have been completed. There are 4 that are currently in progress. One is 66A, and that's a letter from the chair, and that has been drafted. It just needs to be sent. And there are 3 other actions which are all attributed to Parminder. All of them are in progress, and as soon as the action is complete, they will be shared with the committee.
I'd like to apologise for the fact that the letter hasn't been sent yet, which it jolly well should have been, and that's my fault entirely. Is there anything else anyone else would like to raise? Pam.
Is it that one? Yes, it's that one. Got it. Thank you. I wanted to ask about the Education Committee, just to be updated on, because it's mentioned in the minutes again. This is for the Combined Authority, and I just wondered how it was going, how it's forming up.
So we're, as part of the wider governance review at the Combined Authority, it is still a work in progress. Yes. So there are draft terms of reference, but I'm due to be meeting Jodie, who I don't know title, interim head of governance services, next week to start looking at how that will all link in with the new proposed structures. So as soon as there's more information, it will be shared with you.
Super. And would you mind, I think there was, just something I just wanted to make the point, because and I think I made this the last time when we were talking about the action plan to fit in with the strategy, the skills strategy, the big one, and that Peterborough is not a district. It's a unitary.
We will change that to constituent authorities.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions on the action log? Okay, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which I think is the update on the Careers Hub. Let me just find it. Is that right?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So Laura, I think, is joining us online. Is that correct? Can't see her yet. We can hear you, yes.
has led teams within careers education, and really looking forward to having him working with us closely to roll out the plan that you've been presented with. I think it's probably worth noting we have identified a steering group, and those people have been contacted, and we will be looking at hosting quarterly meetings, both at a strategic and an operational level, which we will use to drive the ambition of the hub. We have also identified further funding. So we've been successful with attracting in £19,600 of additional funding to support the promotion of technical education in the area. And a bid was submitted on Friday, a competitive bid, which is to support teachers with understanding the labour market. We will find out that in another month or so's time. The operating plan has been developed, and I won't go through that with you line by line. It has been included within your packs, and I'm very happy to take questions on that. But I think it's worth noting we've got 4 areas of focus over the next academic year, which sit around amplifying technical and vocational education. So making sure our schools are aware of what technical pathways we have and how they can be accessed. We're looking at removing barriers. So we have repositioned one of our enterprise coordinators to work specifically around the SEND agenda, to make sure that those sort of most at risk at being left behind within the careers space aren't left behind. So we've got a big piece of work going on there. And in building leaders for the system, making sure our schools are sustainable, making sure that the people that are involved in careers education have the adequate skills that they need to be able to do so. And this will be done both through careers leader training, through further engagement with senior leadership teams, and also through the development of resources on the portal. I hope that gives you an overview and sort of complements what you've had in terms of the paper and the pack that was put together. As I said, very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Liz.
Hello, Laura.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for your report. And first of all, I need to say congratulations, because being high performing is really good, and it's lovely to hear that. And actually, on the ground, we can actually start to see that. So that's absolutely great. Just a couple of questions I'd like to ask. Thank you for the operational plan. It doesn't, and I know it's not an action plan as such, but it doesn't have a timeline, and I will be really interested to see what the timeline would be on those, but also what measures you're going to take to evaluate the outcomes, because they're quite difficult, I think, to achieve. So I wanted to ask that. And lastly, obviously, you also say that loads of paper, sorry. That we all know about the creation of LSIP, and you say in your operational plan, with careers education central to technical education, I would really like to know how the careers service is going to be integral to LSIP. And I know we're going to have some discussions or some information about how LSIP's going to work, aren't we, Fliss? Because I think it's not very clear for us. So sorry, 2 or 3 questions, but starting with congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I will try and take these apart and hopefully answer all of them in full. So in terms of the timeline, the role that Steve has taken on is looking at actually action planning for each of these. So I think we need to recognise within the overall plan, a number of those actions are going to be much further reaching than one academic year. And we will see those coming into our plan each year. Some of those are much shorter than that, and we will see within the academic year. So whilst I can't go through that line by line now, I can give you an update on that in much further granular detail. In terms of measuring the impact, that will be dependent on what some of those actions are. So for example, where we have an action around amplifying technical and vocational education, we've got core impact measures that we will be reporting against, because there is a funding stream that sits against that, and others will be against the employment and skills strategy. So they have different metrics and different measures, but all are being measured. And again, that can be formalised through the operational plan. And then in terms of the LSIP, and I won't go into this in too much detail because, as you have rightly said, that's going to be covered in a later item. But we thought it was really important to make sure that careers had a voice in the LSIP development, hence the secondment of myself into the LSIP group with the Chamber. And we will be making sure that everything we do through the hub is reflected in the LSIP and vice versa. So it's making sure there is that system approach, that joined up approach to everything that we do, to make sure it's not forgotten. I've spoken with many careers hubs that have been involved in the pilot areas that have had no involvement with it, and there is just they know it's in existence, but they're not doing anything, and the LSIP's not doing anything, and it's almost both are operating in isolation, and that's as far away as we want to be from the LSIP, hence the importance of putting myself in, making sure there is a voice and it's at the heart of everything that is developed.
Actually, I was really reassured by that action because it puts you, as you say, at the centre. And had heard people say, "Well, it's business to business. You know, it doesn't really affect affect careers at all," but it absolutely does.
It does completely.
Sorry. So Laura seconded a day a week to work with the LSIP team, but it should be noted that at the initial conversations around the LSIP, current thinking is that careers will not be within the LSIP, and so therefore that's why we need to make sure that we carry on influencing where we can, and why I've chosen Laura to be part of that team.
Thanks, Bliss.
Thank you. I also have, Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Laura. And
Good morning.
Delighted to hear how well you're doing. That's excellent. My first question is about the Careers Steering Group and the representation. I just wonder who is meeting there and if it's already met. I mean, I'm not sure about that. And I just wondered who would actually be on it, and hopefully from across the county. And most importantly, I wanted to ask about whether there was a representative there who will deal with the SEND aspect of the young people involved.
Yes.
One or two more, if you don't mind, after that.
No, so if I can just...
Sorry.
No, sorry, if I can just give you an overview on that then. We haven't yet met, and as I had said just there, we've got an operational and a strategic group that have been identified, and we have representation from a really wide range of establishments which cover education, industry, specific functions that sit within local authorities, including economic development, the SEND team out of county, and also within higher education as well. And the idea being we have the strategic meetings, which then filters down into the operational meetings to make sure that what is discussed is implemented and reflective of both conversations. I'm just thinking, I've got the job roles. I don't have them to hand at the moment, but I can share with you the roles that have been identified. I think that would probably be helpful for you to see.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that everybody, all the areas across the county are engaged, because you realise I'm from Peterborough and I'm always interested in Peterborough.
Of course.
As well as everybody else, but Peterborough. And the other thing was, you mentioned the technical levels. Can I just say, I was very delighted to hear you talk about these new technical education, and particularly the T levels, where we've got some going on in Peterborough, but it would be very good if the schools got more engaged, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that that's really what you were intending.
Absolutely. So we're looking to work with the schools, one, to influence their technical curriculum. So from a T level point, making sure we have the right spread of T levels available. We don't want all of the schools going down the route of doing exactly the same T level. It brings a whole host of problems, both for industry and education. So we will be working with them on influencing the curriculum, but also on supporting them in moving into that space, recognising that there needs to be closer linkages to industry for them to be able to sort the industrial placements out, So very much, very much at the heart of what we're doing.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have some questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I think since Andy can't be with us today, Tamar's going to read those, but I think it would be good to have them read out and answered in this meeting. So if that's all right, Tamar.
Okay, so the question is, what is the likelihood of businesses engaging with primary schools to give careers advice given the current economic climate? Should this not be delayed until there is a more opportune economic outlook?
And there's a response from the Combined Authority, which I will read. And then after that, sorry, Laura, then I'll come back and ask you a different question.
Thank you.
The response is, it is the ambition of the Combined Authority to have all age careers service recognising current funding. Recognising current funding is only in place for 11 plus. Activities support this ambition will be more of a strategic nature at this point in time. It is worth noting, though, that the Careers Hub was successful in winning funding from the Equalities Office that delivered a Girls into STEM programme in July 2022. This was targeted at primary school girls and was well supported by employers in the area who recognised the value and importance of early engagement. I think my question for Laura follows on quite neatly from that, and it's absolutely related to joining up things, which I think is also what Liz was asking about earlier. I'm aware that there is actually enormous interest from employers at the moment in careers advice and trying to make sure we've got the right pipeline of people coming into the spaces where currently many employers have quite serious skills shortages. And at an event that I was at last week at the Centre for Cities in Cambridge, it was something that was being brought up over and over again by different employers, the need for really good careers advice and for improved skills training. So I'm just slightly concerned that there are an awful lot of people trying to work in this space and not necessarily joining up what they're doing. So I'm hoping very much that you'll be able to reassure me that that's not what's happening. So I know that Cambridge Region of Learning are sort of operating in this area, and Form the Future are, and certainly the Sanger Institute and Cambridge Ahead were talking about the work that they're doing. It would be very helpful if all of those people were talking to each other. So are you able to reassure me that those are conversations that are going on with the Combined Authority as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's, to answer the first part of the question, from an importance around careers education and the fact so many people are interested at the moment, one of the pieces of work we're doing is around the careers leader upskilling point. So it's making sure that all of the schools are able to engage with business. So I think that's key, because actually it's quite difficult for businesses to engage with education when education aren't speaking what business speak, and never the twain shall meet. But in terms of the wider organisations you've just spoken around there, so Form the Future, Sanger Institute and Region of Learning, we work closely with all three of those. So Region of Learning, we're involved in both from a Careers Hub point, but also from a Growth Works with Skills point. Sanger Institute, we work closely with, and one of the cornerstone employers, Welcome Genome, are part of the Sanger group as well. So we work really closely with them and trying to get further work ongoing with them. At the moment, it's been very specific to cornerstone activity, but actually widening that out far further than what we've previously done. And Form the Future, we've worked closely with at the Combined Authority for a number of years, and two of our enterprise coordinators are actually employed by Form the Future. So that ensures that all of our Cambridge schools have the voice of the Careers Hub in the work that Form the Future are doing. And we're very, very aware of what they're doing, the funding that they're attracting, to make sure that we can work succinctly with that system-wide approach rather than in isolation.
Thank you. That's very reassuring. Good to know.
Thank you.
Yes, Fliss.
So I had a conversation with Central Department for Education last week, and we're still awaiting the Sir John Holman review on careers education, but she did indicate that now's probably the time to try and start those conversations again with central government, because I think the career space is going to be mixed up, and for the two combined authorities who are going for the trailblazer devolution. So therefore West Mids and also Greater Manchester are looking to get careers devolved to them. And so I think it's something, well, it is something that we are really pursuing to try and get all of careers provision devolved to the combined authority so that we can join it up. Because I think in terms of partnership work in careers is probably one of the furthest ahead. So there are a number of people engaged, and we are engaging with all of those different people, including Cambridgeshire. I know Laura didn't mention that as well. So it's really just to say there will be changes, and we are, I guess we're ready to go to take hold of those opportunities.
Thank you, Fliss, really helpful. And good to know that that's being considered again by central government, because that would be great. Okay, I don't see any further questions on this item. And I think it's okay. We're recommended to note the performance and future plans of the Cambridge and Peterborough Careers Hub and provide feedback. So it was for noting, and no vote is required. Thank you very much, Laura. Laura, it's really
Thank you. Thanks all.
We will now go to item 2.2, which is working together with the third sector. So Parminder, if you could introduce this one. Do we have Parminder? Speaking into the ether.
Good morning.
Hooray. Good morning.
Good morning, members. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you.
That's brilliant. So to introduce this paper in furtherance of the Combined Authorities business plan to deliver the 6 keys to sustainable growth and the employment and skills strategy, this report seeks to strengthen our partnership and co-production with local third sector organisations to deliver adult education and skills courses. At the Skills Committee of the 5th of September, we talked about our successful procurement process and the contract awards that were approved for 15 independent training providers for the 5-year commissioning cycle from September to the 31st of July 2027, following a 2-stage procurement process, and funding of up to 4.5 million was approved. And the absence of local third sector organisations, both as applicants in the procurement process, but also as successful contractors, were noted. And this report acknowledges that third sector organisations have not always been successful in securing a contract through our procurement processes, and therefore piloting a different approach is proposed. The report also highlights how our main AEB providers work in partnership with local third sector providers through subcontracting routes, and some detail is provided for members in the report in order to provide greater transparency of our work with third sector organisations through this route. What's important is the value of the third sector in reaching deeply in communities and also in engaging atypical learners and also re-engaging hard to reach learners. So this report seeks approval for an allocation of £300,000 from our AEB Innovation Fund and £100,000 from our Multiply for the 2022-23 academic year in order to pilot a different approach for commissioning of local third sector organisations, critically those who have a base within the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority area. The report also highlights 4 potential models for piloting different approaches to third sector commissioning, learning and skills provision, and it's proposed to pursue models 2 and 4, which involves appointing a lead provider. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Parminder. I'm going to do the overview and scrutiny ones first this time. I'll try and get into the habit of doing that. So we have a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which I think Tamar will read, and then I'll read the answer.
So the question is, we recognise the value of third sector organisations in the provision of learning and support. Of the options outlined, Model 2 is preferred as it engages local organisations within their own communities rather than introducing a local authority provider such as Cambridgeshire Skills. Can further information be given on what basis these providers are chosen?
So the formal response from the Combined Authority is that the preference for Model 2 from members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is noted. The Combined Authority will work in partnership with the voluntary sector to co-design the selection criteria for the lead provider for this pilot. This will build on the Combined Authority's existing assessment for selecting delivery providers, which includes capacity and capability of the provider to deliver and the provider's financial stability. A specification will be drawn up with the lead provider for third sector delivery providers. This will be based on reaching underserved communities and/or delivering niche provision. The decision for which model is selected will be made by the Skills Committee today. So that was the Overview and Scrutiny Committee question, and I'm now going to go to Liz.
Good morning, Parminder. Yes, of course, I would support this, absolutely, and it's good that it's come this way. But I do have some concerns that I would like to express. Firstly, if we could look at the table on page 2, there is no overt connection with either Fenland or East Cambs, and I was going to ask the question is how do we in those areas engage vertically rather than expecting it to come down the line to us if we don't actually have a provider in our area. Now, I do see that we have Cambridgeshire Skills as a possible provider, and I would... The concern that I have there is that in the past we've had underspends in that particular area, and I would not want to see underspends in any community activity that we have. I think that's really important. I am concerned about the top slicing of funding, so how much money actually gets to our organisations. I know these are long questions, I'm really sorry. But I would also like to say that 2.6, which is on the third page of the report, which is the conversation with CVS, I absolutely agree with. So, of course, I will support this, but I am really concerned about certain aspects of it. Thank you.
Parminder, did you want to respond on any of that? Yeah, we've lost. There he is.
Thank you, Councillor Every, for your support and for your insights, but also for highlighting some of the issues that we need to be cognizant of in terms of taking this pilot project forward. And we would be, as it says in the paper, seeking to work with CVSs in order to come up with the best option. I also take your point about top slicing as well on board as well, and also and that will be considered as part of whichever option, whichever provider we end up moving forward with.
Are there any further questions, Lynn?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Parminder. I think you're over here for me. Anyway, I'm sure I can see if I look around. Yes, I've just got one or two concerns as well, and principally because can you just explain to me if I'm right that when it comes if money goes direct to these charities, as well, or voluntary sector, the third sector, do they have to have Ofsted inspections if it's done in a certain way, but not if they've got an over? In other words, the Ofsted can be dealt with by the overriding organisation or organisations, whatever. Because my second point is, why do we only have under Model 2 one lead organisation, which I think is it's been mentioned somewhere that Cambridgeshire Skills under Model 4, when in Peterborough we have lots of deprived communities there and lots of charities going on there and third sector operations. Why can't we have two? And because they, of course, the City College do Ofsted, and so they can cover that aspect as well. So I've got, and yet again, like Liz, I was worried about the top slicing because I thought that was quite a lot. But obviously that's going to be determined later, and I accept that completely. But it's principally those sort of concerns that we're not putting more work onto the third sector because of the Ofsted requirement. But I may have got that completely wrong, Parminder. So can you please look into that aspect for me or explain it to me?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Ayres. And you are right when you said that it's the lead provider that we appoint that would be subject to any potential Ofsted inspection, not the individual providers. And then once again, I take the point about the top slicing, and also your question about should it be more than one provider as well, and we can take that back to our CVS representatives, because I think this is the premise of all of this is working differently. So rather than it being about the combined authority, telling providers what to do, which is what we do with our main program, the purpose of this is to pilot a different approach where it's more around co-design and co-production. So these questions that you're helpfully raising today, we can certainly put those to the CVS reps to help us to come up with the best solution.
Thank you, Parminder. That's very good.
Is that the right button? Great. Thank you so much for this. So just very quickly on section 2.6, paragraph 2.6 on page 39, I just kind of wanted to comment that I think the idea of core costs being important really resonates in terms of, we know we've got an issue here with getting these organisations to come forward, and looking at helping out with core costs may well help provide an incentive with that. Looking at the models, I was interested to know, because just at the end of the report, it mentions that although we're kind of discussing Model 2 and Model 4 as the major ones, the CVSs are indicating a preference for Model 2. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of give us a bit of an explanation as to why they're preferring 2 over 4?
I think thank you for that question, Councillor Carling. I think the reason for that is to do with historical ways of working, and the way in which the way in which providers subcontract, and some of that is to do with the combined authorities and the ESFA's funding rules, because what we're doing in essence is dropping down as a contractual requirement, our funding rules and our requirements onto subcontractors. And so some of it I think is to do with that arrangement, which is why we are looking at piloting a different approach. That makes sense. So rather than it just being a subcontracting relationship, that it's more of a different way of working, and it's more to do with a partnership approach, where some of the things in that paragraph 2.6 we can be cognizant of those things, which under our main funding rules it's very difficult to do that. So that's the premise on which we're testing these. So if you like, a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach. It's probably the best metaphor I can use to describe how this varies and how it's different to what we're doing in our main program. That's not to say, and we mustn't think that by saying that we're saying that third sector organisations are not capable of dealing with Ofsted or dealing with the contractual and compliance requirements that we have. We do have third sector organisations that we work with. However, in terms of the smaller organisations who we know would struggle with capacity, and some of the considerations in that paragraph are mentioned, they may well struggle with that. And just to say that there is a figure of 15% management fee, which is quoted in the paper. That is as per our funding rules at the moment. And it is less than the national.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. I'm just going to make a couple of comments, and so Parminder or Fliss, feel free to come back after this if you would like to, but you don't need to, because I don't think they're questions. So first of all, thank you for this paper, Parminder. I think it is really important that, and a good sort of example of the way in which we've been managing the adult education budget more flexibly and more energetically than was the case before it was devolved, that we do actually now have this money and this opportunity to think about how we can engage third sector organisations more effectively. I'm very supportive of the idea that we move forward with Model 2 and Model 4 because I don't think they conflict with each other. I think I think it's important to be clear that actually it might be possible to move forward with both of those and therefore bring in as many different voluntary sector organisations as is possible, because some of them might have relationships with one group and others might find it easier to have a relationship with, say, Cambridgeshire Skills rather than Cambridgeshire Acre, depending on their local circumstances. So I think that the recommendation that we move forward looking more closely at Model 2 and Model 4 and thinking about how those can maximise the opportunity for working with voluntary sector organisations is really sensible. It's great that we've got this amount of money. I mean, it's not impossible that actually if we look at Model 4, we might even be able to use more of this money, because I imagine if we do increase the percentage, it's not impossible that some other Cambridgeshire Skills funding could also be going down this route. So I think that's another reason why Model 4 is worth keeping in the conversation, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It's all quite complicated. Sorry if that sounded a bit complicated, but I think the main thing is that this is actually a really important step for us to be making, because it is certainly the case that some voluntary sector groups, third sector and voluntary sector groups, will be able to to create good programs for some of our hardest to reach learners in a way that is really helpful for us. I haven't heard anybody speak again. I think I've heard lots of people saying yes to Model 2. I would like us also to say yes to Model 4, and the recommendation is that we take both forward. I haven't heard anybody speak against that. I don't know whether anyone wants to say anything before we... Okay. Sorry, let's just get some clarity on that from Fliss.
Okay, sorry. I don't normally have problems with the microphone. So I think we should, as it's a pilot and it's a time-bound pilot, I think we should probably try 2 models, and so therefore look at changing the recommendation to and so therefore if we pilot, it's a test case, isn't it? So therefore it would make sense to try Model 2 and Model 4.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I misread it. Is everyone comfortable with that? Sorry, I hadn't realised when I was suggesting it that I was suggesting something different. I thought I'd obviously just misread it, so it's very good to be clear about it. Is everyone comfortable that that's what we do? Okay, brilliant. Thank you. In which case we can move to the vote, and I think we will take a vote on this. So all of those in favour of the 3 recommendations, with recommendation 3C being slightly altered so that it says and. All those in favour, if you could raise your hands now. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Paminda, for your work on this, and good luck with the next stages. I hope I haven't made it more complicated for you. Thank you. Right, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is 2.3, the review of Innovation Fund proposals, which is Paminda again.
So one of the opportunities that we've spoken about at the Skills Committee on many occasions is how we can do things differently under a devolved system compared to the national system. And the previous paper is a really good example of that, because that wouldn't be possible under a national system. And this paper again highlights another opportunity that we've been able to capitalise, and some of the added value of the devolved system that we have in the skills space. So this report shares to see early findings of a rapid desktop review of the Adult Education Budget Innovation Fund projects. And to share, we haven't shared the list of projects previously that were approved, so to share those, the projects from 2020-21 with the committee. And interestingly, for that year, it also included capital funding from the local growth fund in addition to AEB funding. So for members to note the projects that we funded in the first 2 years, and for 2021-22, we also expanded the fund to create 2 additional streams around partnership and capacity building. And the main finding is that for a very modest investment, the Combined Authority has been able to support 18 projects to build capacity, test innovative and different approaches, and fund projects which may not have been supported through another route, especially capital funding. The Innovation Fund has been welcomed and has received positive feedback from stakeholders and from providers. And interestingly, nationally, the DfE are also consulting on creating an innovation funding strand themselves once they've seen what the Combined Authorities are doing. The report also sets out the estimated budget for 2022-23, and there's some work underway working with finance to finalise that budget. But what we're presenting to committee today are some themes that we're looking to support. So this includes the third sector working that we've just spoken about, and thank you to committee for supporting that strand, supporting equity, diversity and inclusion, sustainability, and critically supporting the themes of our employment and skills strategy as well. So what we're looking for members to do is to note and approve the themes, and to also note the progress that we've made in terms of demonstrating impact on the Innovation Fund. And finally, to add that we are in the process of commissioning a three-year impact evaluation of AEB since devolution. And part of that evaluation will also look at the Innovation Fund projects that we've supported. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Paminda. I think we also have a question from the overview and scrutiny on this one. So, Tamar, if I can ask.
The report states that Peterborough-based providers received the most funding in 2020-2021. Was this based on need rather than geography? And if not, how do we get to a point where the funding follows the need?
And the formal response from the Combined Authority is that for the 2020-21 Innovation Fund, proposals were scored against criteria. There were more high-scoring proposals from providers in Peterborough. Although geography was not a scored criteria, providers had to demonstrate a strategic fit with the adult education commissioning strategy, which does include an explicit focus on Peterborough and Fenland. So I think we're now open to questions on the report. Liz, sorry.
Sorry, I'm at the risk of sounding like a broken record here. I just was, first of all, I wanted to just comment on some synergy, because obviously we welcome in East Cambs the feasibility study of the possibility of having an FE presence there. So that's absolutely great. However, I wanted to make a comment that because we have no FE providers and no providers and no infrastructure in East Cambs, have not really been in a very good position in order to put forward any bids for the innovation project, because we just don't have that kind of activity going on. And I'm concerned that we may have missed out from our residents' point of view, actually being involved. So that's just a comment, because I don't know which of these FE providers would overtly look or seek to come into East Cambs to get their numbers when they are quite comfortably okay with the geographical areas they're in. So the question I'm going to ask is, can you provide the information from these innovative funds and projects of the numbers of people from East Cambs who benefited from attending these, and how we're going to offset that in the future to ensure that we do get enough marketing and activity from East Cambs going into these funds. They're amazing. Of course, I note them. They're brilliant. But I'm really concerned that we don't have the mechanism in East Cambs to profit from them. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Every. And I note the comment that you made about some of the deeper structural issues that we have around FE cold spots and FE provision, and ensuring that we have equitable provision across the piece. I think that what we're asking today is in terms of the themes, and as we move towards delivery of the employment and skills strategy, and as you know, the employment and skills strategy does have a local focus, and you may have noted in the paper it talks about the local innovation fund and a rebranding of the innovation fund as such. So when we come to look at projects for the innovation fund, the local innovation fund moving forward, I think locality and the work that we've been doing with local areas, both cities and districts, to look at specific interventions that will benefit local people, in addition to the work around third sector. That is definitely one of the things that we will be taking into consideration and using the fund in order to address some of the systemic issues. In terms of your other point about, as part of the evaluation, looking at local impact, that's definitely part of the specification for looking at that, the local impact of all of our funding. So not just the innovation fund, because of course this is a small proportion of the AEB, but looking at the totality of the investment that we've had through devolution and the impact on residents.
You content with that, Liz? Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Looking, Parminder, at the list under 210 for the Local Innovation Fund for 22-23, would it be sensible, do you think, under number 4, which is the ESOL Local Planning Partnerships Capacity Building, to have a directory of actually where you can get ESOL? Because I'm not entirely sure everybody knows where, who provides that across the whole county, as it were, because then people sort of can attend. I just thought I'd put that in. And I wasn't sure what you meant about the development of a single point of contact. Can you explain that, please?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Ayres, and you've basically hit the nail on the head there in terms of what that is all about. It very much is about identifying what, because not all of the provision is delivered by combined authority funded providers. There are informal providers as well, and the purpose of that single point of contact is to provide just that. And part of that would be in terms of that capturing of the totality of the offer that we have for ESOL, given the concerns certainly that the DWP colleagues have highlighted and local areas have highlighted around capacity. So the idea of the single point of contact is to provide that function, and it's building on a national best practice model. So it's not something that we've come up with locally. It's something that other areas have, including the Manchester Combined Authority and Greater London, but also some of our neighbouring councils also have that, such as Bedford. So it's building on that best practice model where we have that local coordination, but not just in terms of the offer, but also in terms of wider wraparound support that can enable those learners to access employment opportunities, and also to look at where there are gaps and where we need to look at our commissioning, both ourselves, but also looking wider at DWP and other funded programs that should be supporting this. So it is very much about providing that umbrella-based approach to capturing all of that offer and over a period of time driving improvement of it.
Good, thank you. Could I ask just one small further question, Chair? Sorry, I forgot this one. and number 8, there's it says all themes, skills strategy delivery, and I just wondered whether there's going to be a sort of a top amount that anybody can tender for, or whether they can tender, have you got figures that you'll say you won't go beyond?
I think the detail of that we need to look at. Under previous innovation fund, it was £100,000.
Yes.
Under the last one, the first one, it was £50,000. So, but at this point in time, we haven't determined that. But it very much is around looking at and as you can see on the paper as well, there's an asterisk. So there's some work because some of the projects requested extensions. We haven't, if you like, closed the books on the previous one. So that figure could go up in terms of the funding available. So if we know the totality of funding that we have, we will set the criteria. But previous years, first year was 50,000, second year it was 100,000.
Thank you.
Sam.
Thank you. So just going back to page 50, paragraph 2.10 again. So I'm very supportive of the idea of consolidating the 3 funding lines into one. I was wondering what the logic is behind not seeking an open call for projects this year. And I mean, looking down at table D, obviously there's loads of funding in the different streams. And section 8 then says individual projects and interventions to be determined working together with providers. So if we're not doing an open call for projects, I'm just wondering how we're kind of going to determine what those individual projects will be. So I'm just slightly concerned that we might kind of lose some potential for innovative ideas and such like if we remove that open call option. I'm just kind of wondering if you can tell me a bit more about that.
I think we've had 2 years where we've had various open calls for projects, and we want, again, building on what I said in for the voluntary sector project, we want to look at a different way of approaching this rather than having a bidding process, because I think there's opportunities to work better in partnership and co-production, given that we have a number of groups that we're working across the system to do that. So the thinking was, well, why don't we try, given that it's a smaller amount of money that rather than making people bid and compete for it, given that we've had so many open calls for projects before, that let's try a different approach where it's more about partnership and co-production and adding value. Because what happens when you do that, you're creating, if you like, a beauty parade of providers to try and come up with the best project. And I think you don't always, for small pots of money, you have to look at, in terms of the investment of time, energy, and effort for all partners and all providers, and the likely outcome, which perhaps may have been secured through partnership working. So that's the thinking behind that, is again to try working differently, and maybe not having so in terms of proposals, there would be project proposals, but there may not necessarily be an open competition in the way that we've had previously, where we've had several calls and we've had competitive projects come forward. But it's just again to try and innovate and try different, more cooperative ways of working.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Sam? Good. Okay, I don't have any further questions, and I don't have any questions of my own on this one. I think this looks very sensible. So if we move to the recommendations, the recommendations are to note the review of the Adult Education Budget Innovation Fund programme and the current position and the next steps, and to note the budgets and approve the allocations to the Local Innovation Fund project themes proposed in this report for 2022-23 academic year. And this report is now for noting. No vote is required. So thank you very much for reporting on it for us, Paminda. We'll now move to 2.4, the Health and Care Sector Work Academy, and Pat Carrington will join us to introduce this report. Morning, Pat. Welcome.
Is that the right button? Yeah, okay, great, lovely. Thank you. And fantastic to see everybody's people instead of teams, which is amazing. Thank you for taking this report. And as we're coming towards the end of the Health and Care Sector Work Academy project, I thought it was worth just sort of giving a bit of background to it. So this was an innovation pilot that the Combined Authority submitted as a project to DWP when the Combined Authority was in shadow format. And it was a pot of money to trial something to support people that would be moving on to universal credit. So it was around the time that that was rolling out. And it was a very unusual situation because it was, here is a pot of money to try something that you haven't done before to see whether it works or not. And I think for us, it's fair to say it's been a game of two halves. The way in which we were looking to support people in low wage, low skilled jobs to move into a new sector with a career pathway was really starting to take off and work pre the pandemic. And we could see that the figures were ramping up. The pandemic hit. The health and care sector went into turmoil, meltdown, whatever you want to call it. And as we came out the other side, I think what we hadn't really realised was that it would be a lot longer than just the end of the pandemic before the care sector started to accept, if you like, outsiders back into their world again. And that's only just materialised in terms of the health sector saying, OK, we now need to step back and work with partners again. That's now been hit with a cost of living crisis and the anecdotal feedback that we're getting, and obviously when we have the academic evaluation of the project, we will see whether this is correct or not, is that one of our challenges is the pay in the sector. So people are actually moving out of the sector as opposed to us attracting people into the sector. We have experience within our own organisation where people have worked there for years, don't want to leave, but can earn more money driving for Tesco's or going into Amazon warehouse. So this has given us a bit of a challenge in terms of then being able to pick up and run with it. It was always anticipated it would be a collaborative delivery from providers across the county. Pre-COVID, our FE colleagues stepped into that space, but unfortunately we're not able to deliver. And so we've been working over the sort of past month really to work with our independent training providers who seem to be a lot more geared up to actually being able to step into this space very quickly. Saying that, we've already had two of the large ones step out of the space as quickly as they stepped into it because it's not easy to recruit people onto these programmes. But we are still working in terms of working now with more niche providers. There is a risk associated to this project now in terms of the finances and not actually being able to deliver to the full amount of funding that's available, but we're certainly doing whatever we can to ensure that we mitigate against that risk. We've revisited the contracts of the subcontractors. Myself, Fliss and the DWP are running a workshop next week with the providers, which is a little bit around how the providers can get the DWP working for them to recruit people. We've seen in the direct delivery that we're doing in Peterborough an increase in people taking up the programme now, but it is a little of a bit of an unknown space that we're working in during this time. And Fliss, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add in terms of where we are with it. Okay.
Thank you very much, Pat. We do have a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is,
Okay. So can the provision of further skills training overcome the fundamental problem of low pay rates in the care sector?
And the response is, as noted, the challenges within the health and care sector is wider than a skills challenge. Provision of skills training is just one factor in supporting the sector in attracting and retaining staff. So I think there are massive issues in the health and care sector at the moment. I think it is important just to say that we do need to take quite seriously the fact that this, as has been outlined by Pat, that this project is going to struggle to meet its aims, which I think is probably not. We've had this project on a number of occasions, so it may not be that much news, but it is worth us noting. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Having been in at the very beginning, I'm discussing this in a coffee shop in Cambridge, I think, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, if I may, and just to ask you to respond. We know that the engagement has been the key, not just for this project, but for many others, and it's very difficult to get the hard to reach to actually engage. But I think it has been an invaluable project. And if this doesn't work, I'm not quite sure what will going forward. But what I saw as we were going through, and also my colleague here has been part of the steering group as well, is the changes of approach that you've done to engagement. And to be fair, you've actually been more successful than others in engaging in projects. And I just wondered if you could tell us what changes in your methods of engagement that you feel now work, which we can all learn from.
Thank you, Councillor. I think the biggest learning curve for us is to continually evolve and change, so that what we are doing is we are going to the individuals that we're trying to attract, not expecting them to come to us and not expecting them to sit within what is your traditional delivery model of colleges being open between certain hours. So at times it's been taking the delivery model into the community, but into the employer's premises. That's worked really well in terms of it's really giving a real life experience, but also the employers know that there are people there that they can come in and engage with and hopefully employ. It's the agility, I think, that we've needed. So as we tried to go online during COVID, we did some delivery online, but a very small amount, because it really is a values-based type profession. So it's people wanting to be with people, to support people and give them that respect and quality experience. As we came out of COVID, what we're discovering more now is that people just want to get on and move very quickly. So we've aligned the model again to condensed it, but a continual roll on, roll off, so that it's people's life circumstances get in the way of being able to come and learn, that they know in a few weeks we'll be revisiting that again. So for us, the learning has been about going out to the community, delivering in a way that the individuals that will benefit from it can remove as many barriers as possible and access it easily, accept that life gets in the way of learning. You know, we're not talking about 17-year-olds going to college every day. We're talking about people that have families, that may be carers, that have different circumstances, and then continually adopting and adapting new methods. So it's really been quite an interesting experience for us. It doesn't work to live it in a college. It needs to be out there in the employers or the community in an accessible way.
I think I'm right also in saying that with the original funding, it wasn't just funding a course, it was funding an infrastructure that supported the individual, and not everybody needed that kind of financial support. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Councillor. It's a really valid point that we set it up with what, in a way in which we thought financially we could remove some of the barriers that we thought people experienced. So there was support to pay for childcare or carer support, transport costs, a variety of different things. That didn't get accessed as much as we anticipated. And what that materialised into being was because we were taking the learning to them at a time that suited them, there was less need for that transport or less need for that care. However, it was invaluable to have access to it, because it meant that, particularly in rural areas, that people might not have a programme specifically on their doorstep, but there was the ability still to get there in a way that suited them. We also set it up that it gave different levels of academic support, so not just the vocational learning and working with employers, but in case people needed to improve their maths, their English or their ESOL. And that was drawn on at various different levels at different times. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's that flexibility model, and not assuming that we know what it is our residents want from a programme, but really being able to test that through the pilot has been invaluable. Thank you. Lynn.
Just one question to ask. If you could explain to us how you got on with the DWP and whether they got themselves involved throughout.
Yeah, that's a really valuable question, Councillor, as well. So the DWP are obviously a key partner, and it was their funding in terms of delivering this programme. The levels of engagement from DWP varied. Certainly at the start, and when we were first doing this pilot, they were rolling out the universal credit. And so in some areas, their advisors were focused on actually understanding that themselves and sharing that. So with the DWP, it's been sketchy. There's been times where it's been strong. There's been times where another priority has come into those centres that has meant probably a lower profile on what's delivered here. And then as we've come out of COVID, again, it's about highlighting those priorities. We've had a meeting only today, actually, with the regional director of DWP and reviewing some of this. And I think as well, in some cases, with the providers as well, it's how they've interacted with the DWP in terms of ensuring that they're there and sharing that knowledge and expertise. Take-up was less in terms of referrals than we anticipated. And I think at different times, different methods of engaging have worked. At the moment, social media is the one that is driving recruitment the most.
Thank you. Yeah, Bliss.
It's actually working this time, so that's good. So I think 2 points from me. One is that we had a conversation with the regional director at DWP to ask what it would what the perception will be if this project doesn't spend all the money and doesn't hit all of the targets. And there is no concern. This was a pilot project and not all pilots work. And so therefore we will not get a black mark because we haven't been able to spend all this money. Another option that we're starting to explore is, my understanding is that the funding that we got for this pilot was Grant 30 money. And that means that we might not have to give that money back, but could have a look at how we could perhaps use it in a different format. We're at early conversations at the moment, but it's just to let you know that we are exploring other options so that hopefully we might be able to reuse this money in a similar vein, but perhaps not in such a challenging sector.
Interesting. I might pick up that point on the challenging sectors. Sam, do you want to come in next, and then I'll...
No, that's actually really reassuring what you've just said. Yeah, I was just going to very briefly ask, and you've kind of already covered this a little bit in previous answers, but page 57 in paragraph 2.5 with the mitigations against the risks, which are somewhat reassuring. I was just wondering if you can kind of run us through a bit more about the further marketing that's been done and sort of what impact that's likely to have.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, as I just mentioned, what we're noticing is social media is currently the most popular way that we're recruiting from. And so in terms of giving that greater accessibility, what we'd also hadn't realised is that our subcontractors had not been marketing in the same way in which we had in terms of the direct delivery that we've been doing. So we're formulating a campaign that we all advertise at the same time. So regardless of where you're coming from within the county, that there will be a programme that you can access, as opposed to probably seeing something on social media and finding out, oh, that's only in Cambridge or that's only in Peterborough. So we're looking at that, and then looking also how we can link onto the other websites and make sure that those links follow through, because again, those haven't been as impactful as they probably could have been. And then really it's about sort of just bringing all of those providers together to say, how can we better market the provision that we're doing?
Thank you. I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and it is. It would be very good if we could keep this money. I think it is. I mean, I think the point that Liz made about the fact that this has been an important project, regardless of whether just because we haven't managed to spend, because we've only managed to spend £2.7 million and not £5.1 million, doesn't mean that it wasn't worth spending the 2.7 million. And I think it's incredibly important to underline that, particularly given that there is a huge shortage of skilled workers in the health and social care area. Kind of everyone who manages to come through this programme and be trained is beneficial in a whole variety of different ways, because it's a sector where we desperately need people with the right skills. Which I think slightly brings me to my comment on what Fliss said. I think we do want to carry on working in this field. And I think we can, I mean, there are elements of this that have been successful and then other elements that haven't been. And if we can learn from those and try and continue, even though it's challenging, we do actually still need to be thinking really carefully about how we do bring more people into this sector and how we continue to train them when they start in it. I'm really keen, if we can keep some of this money, to keep some of the work going, even if we don't manage to, even if it doesn't work out on the timescales that we were expecting. Sorry, Fliss, I know that wasn't quite what you meant.
It really wasn't what I meant. So we haven't started thinking about, if we can keep the money, what it could be used for. So therefore, doesn't need to divert, but we need to change the slant of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that we learn from the bits that have been successful and the bits that have been less successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and taking that learning into other sector delivery as well is important. And I think for me, if I may, I'd just like to add, what has been great to see with this programme is people that have progressed, so have come in that may have been economically inactive and are now in a management position within the healthcare sector. And I think you're absolutely right, Councillor. We really must capture those success stories as well.
Thank you. Again, I think we are noting this report and that no vote is required, but it is a very important one that we're aware of. And if it is any help in your conversations with DWP, I think it is worth flagging that there have been successes. It's just that it hasn't gone as fast as we would have liked for a whole range of reasons. Good. I don't think there's anything else we need to say on that one, so we will move on to item 2.5, which is the GrowthWorks performance review, which is Steve Clark, who I imagine is online.
Yes, good morning, Chair and Committee. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can, thank you.
Okay, yes, so this is the regular tabled quarterly performance for GrowthWorks, which we obviously take round to Skills Committee, Business Board and CA Board. This covers the performance for Q7, which is actually Q3 of this year to this calendar year. So 7 quarters of activity gone, and it covers obviously the high growth coaching element, the inward investment service line, the skill service line, and the grants and equity. The actual performance report is appended at Appendix 1. There is an awful lot of information, metrics around this whole contract, but the summary table in 2.2 shows the output performance against jobs and apprenticeships. This is the main contract measure within the consortia contract, although we do have key indicators that sit underneath all of these service lines. The actual key measures in the contract are shown there in table 2.2. And obviously performance is showing that it is strong in places. So over committing in inward investment performance, slightly behind in skills and growth coaching, and on par to where it should be with grants and equity. So the overall outturn against the job forecast is ahead of curve, which actually masks some of the underlying challenges that sit within some of these service lines, with 5 quarters left of the actual contract to go. So customer satisfaction, whilst they are the key metrics in terms of headline numbers for jobs, customer satisfaction is another measure that we take forward quarterly. We use an independent survey, Net Promoter Score, which is a widely used system, and our percentage score was 62% for Q7, which is classed as excellent, following a world-class definition last quarter. So quality remains good in that respect. In terms of a brief commentary on each of the service lines, skills, The skills service at Q7 was not reporting a performance level as expected, and is behind on all leading indicators. The current preferred key account management approach has not so far yielded the results hoped for, and a new approach is being attempted. And we've started, the team in GrowthWorks with Skills have started to look at developing a different approach on the ground and building different relationships to take a more volume approach to skills brokerage. But engagement thus far has been quite slow, and performance of skills is juxtaposed with what the market is telling us, which there is a need to reinvigorate skills through a change of approach. Fliss will be able to add a bit more to that once I finish my intro. In terms of growth coaching, the growth coaching continues and has achieved 1,000 jobs, but the trend line is currently going downwards if you look over the last 2 quarters. And our prediction is that it will, if it carries on as constituted, it will deliver only 59% of targets it's currently contracted to deliver. The inward investment, that service line continues to substantially over-deliver on all metrics, having achieved 627 jobs against a target of 261. And it also has a pipeline currently of 200 companies, which is obviously needing servicing. So that line continues to work well, but more could be done. Grants and equity service line. The grants and equity service line, our prediction is that if it carries on as it's continuing to deliver as constituted, it will deliver 69% of its total 1,455 jobs by the end. The challenge is we now have a dwindling pot as they finally work through towards the end. I think we have somewhere around 400,000 left of CapEx grants. But also the equity service line was late starting. So we've lost a year in that part of the programme. That equity service is now actually up and running, and we will start to see the results of that in the following quarters. In terms of the paper also carries a review of the programme. So just reflecting on what I just said about how the performance is at the top level of jobs might look okay, underneath it's obviously got its challenges. We've undertaken a review of the programme, prompted by concerns of all the lower leading indicators that I've mentioned. The review has looked at macro, micro factors in this, has evaluated the performance of each service line in the past 6 months, where there's been an expected ramp up, which hasn't happened, and also took a re-evaluation of the original programme objectives and the hypothesis around 1,000 high growth SMEs. The review produced 6 recommendations based on all the evidence which has been set out in section 7 of the paper. And those recommendations are proposed to realign the GrowthWorks offering to market conditions and to end up achieving as much of the original premise and target as was envisaged. So the 6 recommendations are increasing the jobs created from the 3 million ERDF funded grant programme, and that's by allowing the project change requests to go to DLUC, changing the scope and focus of those ERDF grants. The growth coaching service to be reduced in terms of its targeted output, reallocation of 500,000 of the funding and the attached jobs that would have been for growth coaching to be diverted to the inward investment service line to service the burgeoning potential that's in that line. An overall reduction of 10% of the jobs created by the whole programme, recognising the challenges that we've already had at this point to Q7 with 5 quarters to go. And GrowthWorks with Skills, as has been mentioned, this is fundamental change is about changing their delivery model and the design and approach to the skills brokerage. And we recommend that particular service is pivoted from the long-range culture change approach that they've been taking to a more focused medium-term deliverables of around apprenticeship starts and the ESF key performance indicators. And also the review also insight gained by the review shows that businesses are struggling to fill vacancies, which is obviously a challenge when you're trying to create jobs through a programme. So the review suggests for a better and more realistic alignment of the Growth Works with Skills to the emergent needs of businesses on vis-a-vis the recruitment. A summary of the overall contract job outcomes for the year 3 of the programme is attached to Appendix 4, which shows what the impact of these changes would make. And obviously taking action now means we've got enough time left in the programme to get aligned to the priorities and support businesses in the region. So in conclusion, these recommendations have been produced to reflect the ability of each subcontractor to deliver, and it's just within the existing resources that we have assigned to the contract for the final year of the project. I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Steve. I think we have a question from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which Tamar will read.
Okay, so the question is, dissatisfaction with the way in which Growth Works presented information was expressed last time, and in response, further data was provided. Unfortunately, with the extra data came more confusion, and the reports are still difficult to understand. How would Growth Works like to address this problem?
So the formal response to the Scrutiny Committee's question is the Growth Works programme, with its multiple service lines of delivery and large numbers of interactions with businesses and individuals, does produce large amounts of diverse data, not just around its contracted outcomes measures, but also on wider key indicators, both quantitative and qualitative. The very broad committee, board and stakeholder groups that this reporting aims to serve have a wide range of focused interests. Officers are happy to work with the Overview and Scrutiny, Skills Committee, Business Board and local authority representatives on ways to improve the presentation of the data going forwards. And I have to say, I think the data is pretty comprehensive and useful, as was the introduction from Steve. So thank you for both of those things. Tom is first this time.
Thank you very much, Chair. A couple of questions from me. Can we have a breakdown and the firm plan for the £500,000 that you mentioned, and just an idea of how that's going to be spent and where the jobs will be created? I think that might be in the appendix, but I just wondered if you could just put some flesh on the bones. Steve, and I'm speaking as a district councillor here, they were given the opportunity to feed in and shape the decision and understand what's required locally. Could we just have a breakdown of the referrals back to the team and on the bigger premises, for example? And finally, why is the £500,000 being taken from skills growth coaching to inward investment? And how does this affect or impact challenges that businesses are facing? Hope that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. Have a go at that. I think, not sure I got understood all that. So the breakdown on the 500k is what we're proposing is to take that from the growth coaching service line, not the skills line. Take it from the growth coaching service line, reduce that line is jobs output. So the 454 jobs that would have been created using that money in growth coaching, and pass it to inward investment. Confidence, as I tried to describe in the report, confidence is not high given the conditions for business at the moment, that if we keep going with just pure growth coaching in the way we've set it up, businesses are not they're not coming forward willing to put some of their hard-earned money paying for a coach to come in and support the business. What they're after are other forms of support. to keep the business growing. So our proposal is to take it out there and move it over. Why inward investment? We've already shown that with the resources we've spent so far on inward investment, that they've actually achieved far more jobs than was expected. There's a significant pipeline of businesses already generated from the work they've been doing that are interested in the region. And those companies seem to be, if they've made the decision to go look at other markets, they appear to have already appear to be in a strong position, have the finances, and by supporting this, we can attract and support them to land in the region and bring the jobs that way, which was a different way. It's a different route to get to the outcome, which is get growing businesses in the region with growing jobs, high value jobs. In terms of the bigger premises question, I didn't quite get that, what's needed, but we have lots and lots of information within the contractor's work that if I can understand what you need to know, we can probably answer that one quite strongly.
I'll follow up on that one. Sorry, one of my questions was actually, why haven't leaders and districts been given the opportunity to feed in and shape the decision, given their role? Were they given that opportunity at all? We undertook, so they will when it goes to board. So we undertook the review based on work with our contractor and officers leading the review. I take your point that, but we're working within the bounds of what contractual obligations we have with the existing contractor. So. And obviously we work with all the local authority economic development teams in terms of what we do with growth work. So they're aware of the performance levels.
Thank you. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Well, elements of this are really disappointing, I have to say. And I'd like to just refer to the report with the 6 recommendations, and I just want to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th one, which is growth works with skills, and drilling down onto the stats that formulate this paragraph and the concerns that there are in the drop in apprenticeships or lack of increase in apprenticeships, the fact that the engagement with SMEs has been so poor, and also just to reflect on what the coaching service people who've had that are saying is important to them, which is growth finance, right people, and effective marketing. They're the 3 top issues that they say. Your wording, from an English perspective, in that paragraph, talks about have not been able to, must change, this has got to happen, that's got to happen, we do this, we do that. What's the plan?
Yes, I will concede that one is perhaps a little bit not as focused. I think I'll let Fliss come in and say a few words, because I've been working very directly with the skills team on that side.
I'm having challenges with my microphone, sorry. Pressing the right button, but it's not coming on. So just to let you know as well, Councillor Every, I am also very disappointed with the team at Growth Works with Skills. Back in the summer, I've spent numerous days workshopping with the team there, with my senior management team as well, and yet they do not seem to take on board the feedback of redirecting the service. So we are currently exploring a number of options. Those options do not include the status quo. We're looking, and the options that we're currently considering is bringing the contract in-house, looking at appointing another delivery partner, and also requiring that they change their senior management structure. So I'm not of that. I'm very frustrated as well, to be honest. So they are working in a different way. I'm not sure that the change is significant enough. So yes, we will come back to you either in an interim report before the next skills committee, but it will definitely come, but I doubt we'll wait that long to start working on a solution.
Can I just Is the internet, are we back on again? Okay, fine.
Yes.
We'll just carry on. Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you. I won't continue to use the word disappointing, but I think the word is definitely disappointing. That's all I will say there. But I was looking at and the way it's been assessed as well. Under paragraph 2.5, I looked at this net promoter score and had to sort of read it 2 or 3 times because I couldn't quite make out if one was saying that excellent equates to having 29 responses out of 124 companies, which gives a 23% Q7 survey response rate. But the previous quarters, the response rate was a lot higher. But for Q7, it is said to be excellent. And well, all I can say is if all you get is 29 responses out of 124, that doesn't seem to me to be a good way to judge quality. I accept entirely it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to get responses, but they managed to get them previously. So does that indicate something as well? So that's my first. Answer that one if you can, please. First.
Yeah. Yes. I actually agree with you. We our independent surveyor asked for more. We propose to get more. As the programme goes on, you've got a bigger pool of potential clients you can survey. And I agree with you. We were very disappointed that the response rate was so low. The definitions of world-class, excellent, and good are defined by percentage bands in this particular type of surveying work. So you're right. It could be slightly misleading that we could jump. And actually, if I'm honest, the way the net promoter score works by taking all those who promote you and take away the detractors, you only need very small variances in those to kind of jump around in terms of percentage. So we are pushing. We have spoken to our contractor. We are going to push for more responses, but actually we've asked them to start warming clients up to the fact that we want them to respond to this survey. That will come to them.
Yes, thank you, because then you can be truly excellent if you get more, probably.
Yeah.
But I also just wanted to make sure I understood how you establish whether, and I was very pleased about the Inward Investment Service. That looks to me to have worked well, because that's all about money going in, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And to create the jobs. But how, and presumably the people you've gone to, they have created 627 jobs in Q7, but it isn't just that money that's created, or is it? Do you see what I mean? There has to be other factors involved in getting a job going than just money going in.
Yeah, well, Inward Investment, as this service line is set and focused, is all about attracting companies into our area. So many of these are overseas foreign companies that are in the pipeline. There are some which are wider UK companies in other parts of the country. The amount of, you're quite right, the workload that can go into a particular company to get it from just being interested and looking around to being actually in our patch, in a building, can take 18 months of quite focused hard work. A very recent example of a local company is CMR, Cambridge Medical Robots, which were helped by this team, and they put many hours of support in. CMR had raised significant amount of money, and we're going to take their manufacturing away from this area. We're looking at Europe and wider, but we managed to support them and in the end help them land in Lancaster Way near Ely, and are creating, or going to create, they've already started, they're going to create the 200 plus high value jobs. But that's one more local example, but we've got many examples of those that have landed, that have come in. So the turmeric company, for example, in Finland, who are creating jobs in Chatteris.
Yes, it might help if we had some knowledge of where the jobs have been created across the entire county.
And
that would be helpful. I think.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm working with the contractor on is we're going to start producing a dedicated local authority cut of all of this activity. It's already quite a large bureaucracy of data and reporting, but we're going to produce a local authority pack, and it will detail that information. And we have that. We supplied the list of where inward investment had happened last time, I believe.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions on this paper. I think the concerns about growth works with skills have been very much noted, and we will all look forward to an update on that, either at our next meeting or before that, if there's more news before that. So thank you. I think we don't need to vote on the first two recommendations, but we do on the third one. And we need a proposer and a seconder. So if we can just take that the first two are noted, and if I could have a, well, I'm happy to propose if somebody else is willing to second recommendation C. Any volunteers for seconding recommendation C? Tom?
Provided it's not just those 6 recommendations, judging from what Fliss has said. You know, it's a bit.
I think there's quite a lot more
There's a lot more to come into it. So, I mean, there's nothing the matter with, as far as I'm concerned, with those 6 recommendations, but it's probably not enough, if you see what I mean.
I think that's fair. I think Tom volunteered. Is that thank you, Tom. Okay, and if we could vote on those on recommendation C, that would be helpful. So all those in favour, if you could raise your hand. Lynn, could you thank you. It's with that caveat, yeah, which is noted. And I think the concerns of the committee are very much noted. Okay, we move on to item 2.6, which is the Employment and Skills Board update, and that's from Fliss.
It's worked first time, so that's good. So this is the standard agenda item on reporting what was discussed at the Employment and Skills Board. The Employment and Skills Board is an advisory board for this committee, and so a number of papers are discussed there before they come here. We did have a very useful conversation at the last Employment and Skills Board about how that board will sit alongside the LSIP, recognising that there is some crossover. But I think a clear distinction was made, and I think it is the right distinction, that the LSIP is focusing on post-16 technical education, where our Employment and Skills Board goes a lot wider than that. So therefore, careers, looking at NEET provision, looking at employability, looking at a lot wider than just a post-16 technical education landscape. And so it has been decided that at least in the first year that we will continue with the Employment and Skills Board, but making sure that the LSIP, through Vic, who's the Chief Exec of the Cambridgeshire Chamber, who's already a member on the Employment and Skills Board, will have a lot more airtime at that board to make sure that we are totally aligned going forward. Growth works with skills, so Gareth also provided an update on performance and had some very useful and critical feedback on performance, and that was noted, and so he will be coming back to the Employment and Skills Board at the next meeting in the new year as well. And then we also looked at the forward plan, recognising that we need to be a lot more closely aligned with the Skills Committee to therefore use the Employment and Skills Board in the function and the remit that it was designed to do.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from Fliss on this one? No. Can I just say that I have been able to attend the Employment and Skills Board occasionally, but not every time. I just wondered if it would sometimes be helpful for a different member from the Skills Committee. I mean, I think for all of us to be invited would not be helpful because it would take up a lot of time. But actually, if it was a different person who attended from time to time, it would give all of us a view of what happens at that board, which might be quite useful. So would other members be interested in an invitation to attend sometimes? Okay, we'll make a note of that. Thank you. That's excellent. I think no vote is required, and that's noted. And then we move on to the finance and performance report, which Riyadh, I think, is going to present to us. Welcome, Riyadh. I think this is Riyadh's first attendance at this meeting. So thank you for being here. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, members. At the last meeting, the committee received an update of the finalised position from last fiscal year, and that confirmed the unspent balance has been carried forward. So this report provides the committee with an analysis of the 22-23 skills outturn to date against the approved annual budget. It's worth noting that currently there is unprofiled in-year budgets, so it's just a single figure at the moment, and the budget's not broken down into sort of a monthly breakdown. So it's the anticipation that for future committee meetings that we're going to generate more meaningful analysis of the year-to-date position by breaking that down. So I think that's one of the most important things that's on the horizon. There's also been some progress in respect of leveraging our financial system Aggresso for closer real-time budget holder and manager monitoring of the granular data and the wider analysis. And I think this will undoubtedly drive forward the business partner relationship that finance is looking to implement. So firstly, just to look at the revenue, income and expenditure. So a review of that table 1 clearly shows that there's not certain funding streams that have landed within our financial system yet. So there is a 6.8 million variance against the full year budget. So that is driven by Skills Bootcamp Wave 3, which accounts for close to 5 million of the underfunding. But I've since received an update that the funding is due to land in October, totaling 725k, and there are similar sized tranches in November and December. But finance has noted that there is a change in the claim procedure, and that's going to require a closer review, just in terms of forecasting and medium-term financial planning. Likewise, Digital Skills Bootcamp accounts for 1.7 million. So I'm just going through the highest variances in terms of the underfunding in terms of percentage. Funding has arrived at the beginning of October for 100k. I think the slowdown is due to terms in terms of the claims seemingly being stuck in the system, and that's being investigated. CEC, there's 156k underfunding, but this just appears to be a timing issue, with 3 claims being processed imminently and will be processed into the next month. Skills Advisory Panel, there's no funding as yet, but the spend happens across academic year, and this is a cut of data from August, so there's not much to note there. If I move on to the expenditure, so the revenue expenditure, which is covered under table 2, there's an underspend against full year budget of close to 14 million. And this is primarily driven by the following. So this AEB devolution program with close to 5 million of year-to-date underspend. And the reason for that is 80% of AEB is allocated to grant-funded colleges, and the weight of payments is at the beginning of the academic year, September to December, so it just wouldn't have hit the system at this time. The paper does go on to list, the other AEB areas as well. So for Innovation Fund, their invoices still being processed. So we would expect outturn in reality to be higher there. Program costs as well, it's mainly down to backloaded activity, and the difference between the financial and academic year. Provider capacity building. There is a separate Innovation Fund report which deals with this variance, but funding is the funding line will be merged into the Innovation Fund for 23-24. The strategic partnership development for AEB, and again, there's a separate Innovation Fund report which addresses the allocation of residual funds. Skills Bootcamp 3, this is mainly down to timing, and is covered above in the funding variance discussion. And lastly, HCWSA. So I know that has been covered in an earlier paper, and the updated forecast is noted. Digital skills bootcamp, and this is essentially down to expenditure lagging income as providers are paid after the receipt of funding. It is worth noting that the DfE extended job outcome achievement timelines sort of happen later in the contract timeline, and this is going to drive some slippage between the fiscal years. So, finance will be monitoring this closely in the broader MTFP exercise. So yeah, just generally, I think rolling into the second half of the year, there's going to have to be greater scrutiny over the full year forecast to ensure that there's a realistic and more precise projection, and that the slippage and MTFP impacts are generated and covered. So yeah, I think that about rounds it off. The variances in funding and expenditure have been covered, and the direction in which finance would like to improve in respect of the direction and just generally driving better management information has also been set out. The performance report under Appendix 1, I think is fairly comprehensive, and finance is also working closely with PMO to ensure that the synergies in the reporting and the risks and outlook are maximised. So yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Riyadh. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Thank you for the report. I think just to note that, I mean, the headline of £14 million underspend does sound quite dire at the moment, and I think it's really important to emphasise that that is due to timing of payments going out, and that we are expecting the vast majority of that will have been paid out by the next meeting, I imagine. There are obviously some areas where we have concerns, and we have raised some of those today, in particular in terms of the healthcare skills paper that we discussed at some length. Fliss, do you want to comment before I finish?
Yeah, I think it is fair to say that we haven't had the finance support that we really needed over the last few months, and so therefore by the time the next skills committee paper comes, it should be a lot clearer on where delivery and performance will be on spend. We've also just had notification from DfE for the skills bootcamp, like we did with the digital boot camps. It looks like we'll be able to carry on taking learners until the end of March. So again, that will give us more time to deliver on that programme as well. So as Councillor Nessinger says, while it looks dire, we are not as in that dire position as what the table shows.
Thank you. That's reassuring. And I think what's important is for the committee to be aware of the places where this is just a timing issue and where there is actually going to be under delivery. And I think we do need to be clear that there are some areas where there is likely to be under delivery. That's in terms of the healthcare one, that's not due to lack of trying, but we need to be kind of mindful about other areas where that's the case.
Yeah, and just to add, at the January Skills Committee, we are bringing a paper which is different to this paper to look at actual performance on each of the programmes by learner numbers. So therefore you'll have a more detailed overview of all of the skills programmes rather than just this high-level dashboard.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Riyadh. It was very nice to see you, and welcome to the team. Okay, I think that brings us to almost the end of the public meeting. I think because we are definitely going to discuss the exempt papers for item 2.8, I think what I might ask that we do is take the agenda plan now, and then we'll just take item 2.8 in private session. Are you comfortable with that, Tamal? Okay. Okay. If you're comfortable with what can be in public and what can't be, then that's fine. Okay. Fine, very good. We'll take the bits that can be, but we will certainly discuss some of it in private session afterwards. So if members can just be careful about that. That's great. Okay, I will hand over to Rachel to introduce the bits that can be in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report today is to provide members with an update to the new university in Peterborough, which has been a key project for the Combined Authority since 2019, and a huge amount has been achieved since then. To summarise the report, ARU Peterborough are now teaching its first students. The Research and Development Building is due for practical completion in December, and the delivery of the second teaching building is in the pipeline. The overarching view of the new university is hugely positive, and the partners, that's Peterborough City Council, ARU and the Combined Authority, continue to believe it to be a catalyst, or will act as a catalyst for growth and development within Peterborough. However, whilst it's necessary to celebrate its success, the sort of purpose of the report is to acknowledge that perhaps in hindsight, the monitoring and reviewing of the original projections and the quantitative objectives of the university were perhaps not sufficiently developed enough, or at least the processes post the opening of the university weren't really established and put in place with all the partners. So the key question, how we continue to monitor the success of the new university, needs to be determined, and it needs to be agreed with all the partners involved moving forward. So through further work, it's proposed that as part of its role, the Combined Authority should work with all of the university partners to revisit the original quantitative objectives that were set at the very start, at the beginning of the phase 1 full business case, with a further review of how we can reset these objectives and these quantitative metrics for the effective monitoring of the university moving forward. So it's proposed that we do this alongside the full business case for the second teaching building, and it's proposed that will come to the Skills Committee and the Combined Authority Board in January. And then shortly after this, in early 2023, subject to getting the successful planning consent for the second teaching building, which we confusingly refers to as phase 3, will work with the university partners to prepare a campus, an outline planning application for the campus, in order to be able to deliver the future ambition of the university moving forward and beyond the first 3 phases. And then in later 2023, we propose to prepare a further update for members, including a partner strategy for the university, and how that translates into a programme business case, which with further detail of what the role of the Combined Authority will be in the next sort of 2 to 5 years. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an overview of the purpose of the report. Obviously appreciate there is further matters to be discussed as well, but at this point, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, it was important to have that part of the report in public, so thank you. Questions or comments for Rachel? Lynn?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it's an interesting report, Rachel. Thank you very much. And I didn't quite hear, is it Metric Dynamics that did the skills strategy? Are they working together with the university and you and PCC, whatever, to do these objectives, as it were, and alter them for the future? So they'll come back here for us to have a look at.
Yes, that's correct. So Metro Dynamics have worked with the Combined Authority consistently on the university projects up until recently. They are currently commissioned under the Phase 3, second teaching building project, to help deliver and rewrite the full business case that will come to the Combined Authority Board in January. So yes, they are the consistent party to help us take the original business case, redefine it in order for us to be able to monitor its progress moving forward.
Sure. I wanted to ask simply, do you think that giving it until the January Skills Committee is long enough? Because one can imagine that doing something like that and having to go through all the data that's been achieved, and they've only just opened up at the university, and they're going to have more people coming in January because they have intakes during the year, unusually. And I just wondered whether there's going to be enough time to do that
Yeah, I think
fully. If you're happy, that I'm just
I
asking
think
the question.
that's a sensible question, and that obviously, time is of the essence. It's not something that we've just started to think about. It's something that's been being considered or has been considered, and we have been working as a partnership. I think it's just been a case of not having had the opportunity because of obviously opening the university to work together to formalise it, and it feels fitting that we do that as part of the process that we've got to go through for the FBC for phase 3, the second teacher building, because we don't want to continually report against something that might not necessarily be valid today. So we don't want to continue to carry that forward. So it seems sensible.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd just like to say congratulations on having started up with the number of students that you have. And I know there will be a new intake in January.
Yep.
And I'm also aware that I think that the number of students is slightly lower than was kind of written into the original plan. I think the number of students is really impressive for the first opening in September, regardless of what was in the original plan.
Yeah.
And I'm very much looking forward to coming up and visiting and seeing the building that when I was last there was full of builders and concrete and, and finding it full of students.
Yeah, it's very different now. And you're always, I'm sure ARU, Peter would be happy to welcome anybody who wants to come and have a look around. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Lynn. You need your microphone because otherwise.
Ask all skills committee to visit. Because it's very important, not just for Peterborough, as I keep saying, but for the entire region.
Absolutely, it's a really important new site for that area, and it is exciting to have people actually in there and learning, which is great. So we do need to vote on this, I think. So the first. No, it's just for noting, okay? We note all the future work. And it will be, I think that certainly it is timely to have a review of the future strategy for the university and its relationship with the combined authority. So we'll look forward to that coming back in January. But we have noted that section of the report. So therefore, I think we will now go to the agenda plan, and then we will come back and discuss the exempt appendix afterwards. So Tamar, do you want to take us through the agenda plan? I don't think there's anything unusual. Does anyone want to comment on the agenda plan? No. So in which case, we will close the public part of the meeting. I think what I'm going to do is suggest that we have a 5-minute break as we close the public part of the meeting, and then we'll come back for the discussion of the exempt part, which, just to say, I don't think will take that long. I just think it's important you know about what's going on. So thank you for the meeting. The meeting public. Oh, do I need to say we're going into private session officially? Right. I need the words for private session, which are.
You need to vote on it as well.
Okay. The meeting now. I think the meeting now needs to move into private session because I think it's important that we do discuss the exempt appendices. So in order to do that, I would like to recommend that we now move into private session to discuss the appendices of this report, which are exempt from publication under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, in that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. Do I have a seconder for moving into? Thank you, Sam. And could we all vote that we go into private session? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll have a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene after that, after a glass of water.